Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, when money comes from God, it doesn't make noise, it makes moves. It doesn't announce itself with glitter or gold. It manifests with grace, purpose, and divine timing. Some of you have been praying for a breakthrough, for provision, for a shift in your finances. But hear me. When heaven releases wealth into your hands, it's not for you to boast, it's for you to build. There's a difference between money that man gives and money that God sends. One fades with the economy, but the other carries the weight of destiny. When divine resources begin to flow, they come wrapped in responsibility. That's why you must keep quiet and stay wise, because not everyone around you can handle what God is about to do in your life. The enemy listens for noise. He studies your celebration to find your weakness. But those who walk in divine prosperity know the power of silence. You don't flaunt it. You steward it. You don't rush to prove anything. You let your fruit speak. The ones who understand that money is a divine assignment don't chase it. They attract it through obedience, excellence, and integrity. So when the blessing comes, when doors open and resources pour in, move differently. Stay humble. Stay discerning. Because when money comes from God, it carries His fingerprint, His instruction, and His glory. When money comes from God, it carries a divine assignment attached to it. It is never sent for vanity, validation, or competition. It is sent for impact, purpose, and transformation. Divine wealth has an agenda beyond self-pleasure. It is the fuel that drives destiny. There are blessings that elevate you, and there are blessings that position you to elevate others. When heaven releases resources into your life, it is not just because you prayed for them, but because there is a purpose that requires funding. God does not send wealth where there is no vision, and He does not anoint hands that do not intend to build His kingdom through integrity, generosity, and wisdom. Many people misunderstand prosperity because they think it is simply about money in the bank, cars in the driveway, or status in the world. But when the money comes from God, it is different. It moves in silence, produces stability, and manifests sustainability. It doesn't come to flash your success. It comes to finance your calling. Every divine deposit carries a divine demand. You are not just a recipient, you become a steward. That's why those who walk in divine prosperity don't just spend, they strategize. They understand that money from God is meant to be multiplied, not misused. It is meant to expand purpose, not ego. When divine wealth enters your life, you will notice that it arrives with peace, not pressure. You won't have to manipulate, chase, or compromise to get it. It will come through obedience, diligence, and divine alignment. That's why when you receive it, you must remain rooted in humility and anchored in purpose. God blesses you so that His name may be glorified through what you do with the blessing. And because the blessing is sacred, it must be handled with spiritual maturity. You cannot treat what is holy as ordinary and expect it to last. Divine provision comes with divine boundaries. You will feel a pull to protect it, not to publicize it. You will discern that not every opportunity is meant to be taken. Not every partnership is meant to be pursued, and not every person can handle proximity to your new level. Wealth from God requires discernment. It tests your character more than your competence. It will expose whether you are driven by greed or guided by grace. The moment you begin to treat divine resources as a personal trophy, you risk losing the spiritual covering that sustains them. God's money doesn't just change your lifestyle, it changes your mindset. It teaches you to give without fear, to manage without pride, and to live without comparison. It redefines success as stewardship and turns your prosperity into a platform for divine influence. When God blesses you with increase, it is not always meant to be broadcasted. There is a sacred power in silence that protects the seed of your blessing from contamination. When you make too much noise about what God is doing, you invite unnecessary attention, opinions, and resistance that were never meant to be part of your journey. Divine blessings often begin in secret because God wants to develop your discipline before displaying your destiny. The quiet season is not punishment, it is protection. When you learn to stay still and silent after a divine move, you create space for wisdom to work. You begin to understand that some victories are meant to be celebrated privately until their fruits speak publicly. When money comes from God, the enemy takes notice. Every divine promotion attracts demonic observation. That's why noise becomes dangerous. The more you talk, the more you expose what the enemy can attack. Silence, on the other hand, builds a hedge around your progress. It confuses the enemy and protects your momentum. Some doors will only remain open if you learn to close your mouth. Your quietness becomes your armor, and your discretion becomes your defense. People may wonder what you're doing, but your peace will be proof that God's hand is upon you. There is also wisdom in withholding information until the right time. When divine resources start flowing, not everyone around you will celebrate. They will calculate. Some will envy your elevation, others will try to manipulate your generosity, and a few will test your discernment. That's why God allows seasons of hiddenness. He gives you wealth that is seen only by Him until your spirit matures enough to handle visibility without vanity. The greatest test of divine prosperity is not how you spend money, but how you manage silence. Noise seeks validation, but wisdom seeks preservation. The more you talk, the more you dilute the power of divine favor. When you stay silent, you allow God to complete what He started without interference. Silence allows revelation to settle in your spirit. It helps you listen more clearly to divine instruction about where to sow, whom to help, and how to expand. You become sensitive to the flow of heaven's economy, which operates by principles of discretion, patience, and alignment. Those who keep quiet in the midst of blessing are not being secretive. They are being strategic. They understand that wealth that makes noise fades quickly, but wealth that moves in wisdom builds legacy. Silence also keeps your motives pure. It reminds you that what you have is not a symbol of superiority, but a sign of stewardship. When you stop feeling the need to prove your prosperity, you begin to live in true abundance. The quiet heart hears God clearly, and the wise spirit knows that some blessings speak loudest through peace, discipline, and silent gratitude. Wisdom is the gatekeeper of divine prosperity. When God entrusts you with wealth, He expects you to guard it through discernment, discipline, and divine insight. Money without wisdom becomes a weapon that destroys its owner, but money guided by wisdom becomes a tool that transforms generations. Divine prosperity is not sustained by strategy alone, it is sustained by spiritual sensitivity. You must know when to move, when to pause, when to speak, and when to stay silent. Every blessing carries a rhythm, and only wisdom helps you stay in sync with the divine flow. Without it, people rise too fast, speak too soon, and fall too easily. When money comes from God, it is not meant to control you. It is meant to be controlled by you. But only wisdom gives you that mastery. It teaches you how to handle increase without arrogance, success without pride, and abundance without recklessness. There will be moments when God elevates you in places where your silence speaks louder than your words, and your restraint carries more authority than your reaction. The wise know that not every opportunity is divine, and not every door is from heaven. They discern the difference between distraction and direction. Wisdom is what keeps you from leaking blessings through careless conversations, emotional spending, or premature exposure. When divine wealth enters your life, you must understand that the same blessing that builds you can also break you if you lack wisdom. Many lose what God gave them because they were not mentally and spiritually prepared to manage it. Wisdom teaches you to build systems, not just savings, to create structure, not just success. It guides you to plant seeds in the right soil, invest in the right people, and maintain alignment with divine timing. It helps you recognize that prosperity is seasonal, and that every season requires a different version of you. Wisdom also protects your spirit from pride and your heart from deception. When the blessings increase, the voices around you multiply. Some will come to support, others to drain, and a few to destroy. Without wisdom, you won't know who's who. But when your discernment is sharp, you recognize that not everyone qualified to hear your vision is qualified to walk in it. You learn to consult heaven before you consult people. You allow prayer to precede every decision, and you let peace be your confirmation. True wisdom doesn't just react to what is seen. It perceives what is unseen. It senses the spiritual currents beneath material gain. It keeps you anchored when success tries to sway your soul. Those who walk in divine prosperity walk carefully because they know that one foolish choice can close a door that took years of obedience to open. Wisdom is not about being cautious out of fear. It is about being intentional out of understanding. It is the voice that whispers, move with purpose, not pressure, and the guardrail that ensures your prosperity remains pure, powerful, and purposeful. True abundance does not come from ambition, it flows from obedience. Ambition chases outcomes, but obedience attracts overflow. When money comes from God, it is not the result of striving, but of alignment. It is the manifestation of walking in divine order, doing what He said when He said it and how He said it. Many people pursue prosperity by pushing doors open, but those who understand divine wealth know that the greatest breakthroughs come through surrendered hearts, not restless hands. When your spirit is aligned with divine instruction, provision finds you. You won't have to manipulate, compromise, or compete because heaven funds what heaven orders. Obedience carries a currency that no earthly system can replicate. It unlocks favor in hidden places, creates opportunities in barren lands, and multiplies what looks small in your hands. When God speaks, He already sees the provision attached to His command. The moment you obey, that provision begins to move toward you. This is why obedience must come before abundance, because prosperity without purpose becomes poison. Many rise quickly and collapse just as fast because their ambition outpaced their obedience. They built empires without divine endorsement, and what is not blessed by God cannot stand in the storms of testing. Divine wealth requires a heart that listens. Sometimes, obedience will lead you away from what looks profitable toward what looks uncertain, but it is in those uncertain places that true abundance is born. God uses obedience to test your trust, to see whether you value His presence more than His provision. When you choose obedience over opportunity, you prove that your motives are pure. You show heaven that you can handle abundance without arrogance. That is when money starts to come not by effort, but by divine orchestration. Ambition makes noise, obedience moves in silence. Ambition seeks recognition, obedience seeks revelation. Ambition looks for applause, obedience looks for alignment. The posture of obedience keeps you grounded when success tries to lift you beyond humility. It reminds you that prosperity is not ownership, it's stewardship. Everything that flows into your life is meant to flow through you, not stop with you. That's why God can trust the obedient with more, because He knows they won't idolize what was meant to be a tool. When you live by obedience, your life begins to operate under divine timing. Things that once required striving begin to unfold effortlessly. The doors you couldn't force open swing wide on their own because obedience builds favor behind the scenes. Even in seasons of lack, obedience positions you for supernatural increase. It ensures that whatever you gain is guarded by grace, not just grit. While ambition burns out chasing results, obedience rests in divine assurance. And it is in that place of peace that true abundance begins to multiply, not as a product of human desire, but as a reflection of divine design. When God funds your vision, humility becomes your greatest security. Divine prosperity does not come to inflate your ego, but to expand your influence for His purpose. When heaven begins to release resources into your hands, the posture of your heart determines how long those blessings will remain. Pride repels divine provision, but humility attracts continuous increase. The higher God lifts you, the lower you must bow in gratitude and awareness of the source behind it all. Humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking of yourself less. It is the quiet confidence that recognizes that everything you have is a gift entrusted, not a reward earned. When divine wealth flows, it will test your character more than your competence. People often assume that wealth changes others, but it only exposes who they already were. Without humility, the same blessing that was meant to build can begin to break. The moment you start believing you are the reason for your own success, you step outside the covering that made that success possible. Humility keeps you anchored. It reminds you that your accomplishments are evidence of God's faithfulness, not your superiority. It allows you to celebrate the blessing without corrupting it with arrogance. When money comes from God, it carries the fragrance of responsibility. You are blessed to build, not to boast. You are entrusted to manage, not to magnify yourself. Humility helps you stay sensitive to divine instruction on how to handle the increase. It makes you teachable, approachable, and grounded. God cannot trust a proud heart with eternal assignments because pride makes you deaf to correction and blind to danger. But a humble spirit stays alert. It hears God's whispers in the midst of abundance and remains thankful in every season. There will be moments when success tempts you to forget where you started, when the applause of men grows louder than the voice of God. In those moments, humility becomes your anchor. It reminds you that elevation without submission leads to destruction. Every new level demands a deeper level of surrender. When God funds your vision, it's not just about what you build externally, but who you become internally. He doesn't just bless your hands, He refines your heart. Humility also protects you from isolation. It allows you to honor others even when you rise above them. It keeps relationships pure, motives clean, and intentions clear. People are drawn to those who walk in quiet confidence because humility radiates peace. It does not need to prove, compete, or compare. It simply produces fruit that speaks for itself. When divine wealth increases your reach, humility ensures your integrity remains intact. It transforms your success into service and your prosperity into purpose. It makes your rise sustainable because it is rooted not in pride, but in principle, anchored in the awareness that without God, even abundance loses meaning. So as you rise, remember this: the true measure of divine wealth is not how much you hold in your hands, but how much heaven can trust you to release. Stay grounded when the blessing comes. Stay wise when the doors open. Stay silent when success speaks louder than words. Because when money comes from God, it is not just a transaction, it is a transformation. He is not just enriching your pockets, He is enlarging your purpose. Guard your humility, protect your peace, and let your prosperity preach louder than your pride. For those who stay faithful in silence, obedient in abundance, and humble in elevation, God doesn't just bless them once, He makes them a blessing that never runs dry.